Hi everyone, and welcome to the next session in our 2026 digital marketing series. I'm Shane O'Hare, client partner at Common Ground, and I'm joined today by Sam Searle, head of digital, and Daniel Bianchini, one of our co-founders. Today's webinar is all about metrics that matter in 2026. I think as marketing leaders, we're under more scrutiny than ever to kind of prove our impact. The C-suite wants clarity, not clutter. And while performance dashboards have become much more complex, they haven't necessarily become more useful. So this session is all about cutting through that noise, identifying metrics that truly drive business decisions, translating data into commercial language, and showing how marketing performance connects directly to revenue and growth. Some things I think would be really useful to cover. So why marketing reporting often fails and how to fix it, the KPIs that actually influence budget decisions, how to simplify attribution without losing credibility, reporting frameworks that speak the C-suite's language, and the biggest mistakes marketers make when proving ROI and how to avoid them. So with all that in mind, let's get started. Dan, I'll come to you first. Why do you think marketing reporting still struggles to land with business leaders, even with all the tools we have today?
Thanks, Shane. I think this is one of those questions that has been around for as long as I can remember, really. It's something where we constantly want to talk about our reporting and make great reports to the clients, to the businesses that we work for, but technically they always fail. There's always an issue around that. And for me, there's two reasons behind that, I think. The first reason is we as marketers have lots of data, lots of information, and we want to throw as much of that information into our reports as possible. And that just becomes almost like analysis paralysis. So if you're opening that report and you've got 10, 15, 20 different metrics that are just showing you all these different numbers, it's not really useful for those that are maybe looking at it once a month, maybe, or the C-suite and stuff like that. So what we're essentially doing is overwhelming our stakeholders with too much data, with no clear takeaway. And especially the C-suites, okay? So what they want to know is, what does this mean for me? What does that number actually mean? What am I getting out of this, and how's the growth? So I think we need to essentially just look at the data that we're providing, maybe streamline it, and instead of having too much data, we need to concentrate on the narrative, the story that we're trying to tell, around this is the number, this is the reason, and this is what you get out the back of that. I think the other key point is that we're not always aligned with the commercial objectives. I think what we find, and we struggle ourselves, is to try and get those KPIs, those commercial numbers from our clients. And I think that is quite a big problem for not only agencies but businesses alike, where they don't know those numbers, so therefore they can't align their marketing activities to that. And it should be a fairly straightforward thing. You have your business objective, and then you bring that into your marketing element, and then we need to align or work backwards and go, right, to get that, we need to work on this, this, and this, and that goes in. At the moment, a vast majority of CMOs can't tell us their KPIs, and they don't align with businesses. And I think that's the biggest problem. So while there's that gap between them knowing what the KPIs are and us sort of knowing what we are trying to achieve and thing, I think is going to continue to be that. So I think, let me just summarize it essentially. For me, reporting fails when we're reporting just to marketing and we're not considering reporting to the wider business. Because the best reports should be the ones that, if you can forward this onto your CFO and they know exactly what's happening, or your COO or your director of X, then that's when you've got a really solid reporting system.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's I guess it's trying to speak the language of the person reading the report, essentially, which can be difficult because I mean the example you just gave, Dan, the CFO might read it slightly differently to the CTO or the CMO or whoever it is you're reporting to. So I mean, ultimately, it I think it requires probably a bit more care and consideration than most people are kind of using at the moment. I'd imagine in most cases people have one report, one summary, and it just gets blasted out to everyone, and that might not be the best way to do it.
But that's a really important point there, is you need to, at the start, understand who's going to be reading this report and which key stakeholders it's going to go to. Because therefore, obviously with the software that we use in terms of Agent Analytics, we can then create a different dashboard for the different stakeholder that may go to. So we might have one a real high level for the CEO, the CTO. Then we might have one for the CFO, and then we have a bit more detail for the marketing team that want that information. So it's really understanding that at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely right. And Sam, I mean, Dan's covered quite a few points there, but from your perspective, is there anything, any particular reasons why you think marketing reporting can fail today?
I think Dan's covered a lot of it. It's when you're not connecting the dots between, especially with like Google Ads on ad spend, where it can be a considerable amount of money. I always, if it's possible, try and connect the ad spend to the pipeline, to the revenue, because at the end of the day, that's what people care about, and that's what's going to. If it can clearly see that you spend £5,000 and you get sort of £500,000 in terms of pipeline, great. People are more likely to invest, trust what you're doing, and go from there. And also, it's telling that story. It's so easy to focus in too much on some of the data, like click-through rates, cost per clicks, quality scores. Do they care about that? Some marketing managers might want to know that in more of a granular level, but does the CEO really care? Very, very rarely. They care about what's going to be delivering them the results. And yes, you can use them metrics to help tell the story if we're seeing more competitors in the marketplace. So we are seeing cost per clicks going up, which is driving slightly less conversions than we want. But you've got to always try and bring it back down to what they care about. And it's often, quality of leads. That's more of a focus. What's driving that pipeline, and is that ending? Yeah, are they like converting that into revenue? It's easier said than done with some of the tracking. It's not always what we want it to be, but that's where we've got to try and steer it.
Yeah. I think a really important point you mentioned, Sam, and I think Dan mentioned this as well, was telling the story. Because it kind of puts some context to the numbers. But I think a big part of telling the story is answering the why. So if this channel is doing really well, why? What can we do about it? You know, how can we get more out of it? If this channel is underperforming, why? Whereas what you tend to see in a lot of kind of internal marketing reports is this channel's up, this channel's down, and there's a lack of the why, which is, you know, arguably the most crucial insight in the whole report. I think moving forward, when we've kind of touched on a couple of the challenges with metrics and measuring, and I do think it's going to get more challenging as we go into 2026. You know, we know the kind of impact of AI on various channels and the kind of black spots that can come with that in terms of reporting, and the lack of being able to report on certain things. Is there anything in particular, and Sam, I'll come to you on this, is there anything in particular that you think brands need to focus more on from a kind of metrics and reporting side of things next year?
I think they need to try and get quality metrics involved. So by what I mean by that is not just necessarily focusing on the number of leads, but focusing on what campaigns are actually delivering MQLs, SQLs, revenue, pipeline, and help using that information to help steer and guide Google with your own optimizations, but also how Google is learning. So applying different conversion values to each of the different conversion points. That can then open up some different bidding strategies, gives data more guidance, gives Google more guidance on what it needs to be sort of focusing on optimizing for. Because I think if you can get that into it, it can really help sort of focus on, like, Google can then see a demo form is much better than a brochure download. Little bits like that will help, but also if you can get that SQL and MQL data and do the same thing that with this campaign's delivered 5 SQLs, whereas this other one, yes, it's delivered loads of leads, but none of them have gone through the funnel. That's all going to help things take it to the next level, because as we're sort of losing some control of what we're doing with, like, as Google's taking more on with bids and like keyword match types and various other things, we need to make sure we're providing as much quality information and data possible to help guide it, because that's how you're going to work best with Google, is the better quality information, data, sort of even matching it more with like audiences that you want to, like ICPs and stuff. the better the outcome's going to be. So that's what I'd sort of say needs to be a priority.
Yeah, I agree. Quality is a really important one, and again, it can be one that's quite often missed out of reporting. I think a lot of people tend to make the mistake of just talking about the numbers themselves, and it kind of goes back to the why. You know, if something is working or something isn't working, quality is normally sort of a big factor in why that is. Dan, from your perspective, is there anything you think brands should focus more on from a reporting and metrics side?
Yeah, I think that in one of the other sessions where we were talking about the customer journey, we talk about how it's fragmented now. It's no longer that linear sort of straight line approach to how users come in. So I think we need to relook at the metrics that we're reporting on and build them out into different areas that we want to focus on in terms of the report. Essentially, we as marketers need to be showing the impact on pipeline. I mean, what's driving velocity through to MQL, to SQL, what's converting, what drives the acceleration of the deal. I think a lot of the conversations that we're having is how can we get more information from CRM such as HubSpot, Salesforce, etc., back into our reports so that we can actually see the impact that we're making. It's no longer good enough to just say, we've driven you X number of GA4 form submissions or leads or inquiries that way. It has to be, what is the quality of those? How many of them are leading through to the sale? And what's the average order value of that sale? Because even if it means that we're driving less actual MQL to SQLs, but the higher conversion rate at that point leads to higher revenue, that's good for us to know and better information for us to. So I think essentially we just need to take a step back, understand what each of the ROI is per channel. Because I think the KPIs that win in 2026 will just speak to revenue, speak to retention and return. It's not all about the wider X and Y seen this. It's we need to go back to that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I mean, I think you both touched on some of this already, but it'd be good to, I guess, considering all the change that we're seeing in digital marketing with, you know, the introduction of AI and how that touches everything, but also just how existing channels are evolving. Is there anything you think we should or brands should focus less on from a reporting side of things? Dan, I'll come to you first this time.
Yeah, sure. I think some of that's going to be around sort of like impressions. That's going to be one area across both paid and organic. I think we've seen that across the board where AI reviews are just driving the impressions up, even if clicks are stagnating or going. I think we need to have that, potentially look at bounce rate as well. I think that might not be something that we'd always want to focus on. I think the key thing is just going, how do we move away from those vanity metrics that maybe have always been there? It gave us that little fuzzy feeling, a ranking, for example, or we've gone up a little bit. So therefore, I'm going to talk about that as a positive. The way that things are going, I think we just need to move more towards that. What's the impact? Okay, I mean, the value that we're bringing, the return on investment.
Yeah. No, I completely agree in terms of the kind of impressions and rankings. I mean, would you say they need to be kind of removed from reporting altogether, or some reports depending on who they're going to, or is it that they're going from relatively primary metrics to now secondary metrics?
I think ultimately it's all related to the business and what that business is doing, what their goals are. Because some people, their objective is to increase visibility in the search engines because that is the model that drives them revenue. They could be publishing and therefore they need to be visible for all of these different terms, and they just want to get that thing. So it is going to be dependent on the business itself. If you're in B2B and you're predominantly looking at MQLs, SQLs, then I think we just need to bring them down a level. They should no longer be the primary. They should be sort of the secondary in terms of, okay, you're doing well from a visibility point of view, okay, but that's not my number one. I'm not going to be too concerned if it goes up or down unless it's impacting the overall objective, which is which is revenue pipeline and revenue.
That was a Freudian slip from an SEO there.
Yeah, I know. Old habits die hard.
And Sam, I mean, Dan's covered a lot of the SEO side there. From the paid media perspective, is there anything you see brands focusing less on from a metrics and reporting point of view next year? Oh, I think you're on mute, Sam. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
that is a rookie error. So for me, it would be focusing less on impressions and clicks, like Stan's mentioned, unless it's part of telling of the story. I think there's certain metrics that again need to be more dropped down to sort of secondary or even below that. So, and less panic if there is certain changes. So for me, I don't always care if cost per click goes up, because if it means I'm driving better quality traffic, which converts better, leads to revenue, then fine, cost per click goes up. But in the past, there's always been that bit of a panic that you need to get the cost per click down as low as possible. That's not going to sort of always target the best audience. So you got to be wary of where that big focus is on. Is like, should you be focusing on that cost per click metric if your conversion rate is also going up a lot more and your cost per conversion goes down? Not necessarily where you need to be prioritizing your optimization. So I think there's just different levels, and for me it's those sort of old school metrics that when you may only just be focusing on the volume of leads, you don't care beyond that, then yeah, cost per click does have that sort of importance. But now when you're looking beyond that, it's not necessarily as pressing most of the time. There will be sometimes, but it's not always the case. And I think it's when I'm talking to clients and they go, oh yeah, I want to do a brand awareness campaign. I'm like, is it brand awareness, and what does that mean to you? Does that mean impressions and clicks? Or after a month and you're not getting conversions like you wanted to, are you going to then want to try and pivot? Because then they're two different campaigns we want to be running. And I think we need to focus less on just going like, this is what we're wanting to do, and not diving in deeper. We need to dive in deeper to sort of work out what the main purpose of that goal is. And generally it is to get more revenue, like brand awareness. Like, why do you want to target that? Is it because you want to get more attention from that particular audience? Why do you want that audience? Because you then want them to go on your website. Why? To go. And I just keep pushing more and more into those whys. And then at the end of the day, it's, oh, so they become customers. And it's like, okay, well, let's focus less on that top bit and focus on how we can like nurture throughout, rather than just that initial step in, because that's where you can get a lot of wasted ad spend. So I think for me it's trying to focus on what actually is going to drive business growth, because at the end of the day, especially for us as an agency, if the C-suite's not happy because business is going down, they don't care if impressions have gone up or clicks have gone up, or even those like brochure downloads have gone up. So they're like, so what? We're not seeing the benefit of that. So I think we just need to reshift and shift what our focus is on.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's a really important point you made, Sam, about, I guess, a bit of a mistake in terms of some marketers kind of honing in on certain metrics without seeing the kind of full picture. And I guess it kind of goes back to an earlier point you made in terms of needing that full picture as well. You kind of need the data, not only for what we can see before the lead happens, but beyond that as well. Because if cost per click is going up, but revenue is going up at a kind of greater pace, it's obviously not an issue. So yeah, it's two really good points there, I think.
I think one thing that Sam said there as well is like, it's one about prioritization in terms of making sure you're prioritizing the right metrics. But before you get to that, it's understanding the why and digging a little bit deeper and sort of peeling back the onion, if you like, to really get to that information. Because sometimes you're only going to get like superficial high level information, and you sort of need to peel that back to really understand what the goal and the objective is. And then we can get the right sort of metrics that we need, so we can then remove some of the older ones. I also think there's education. A lot of us are still quite rooted in the past, and we've all talked about it throughout the series. Is digital marketing is fundamentally changing and drastically at some pace at the moment. So that's going to sort of have people getting uncomfortable with some of the metrics that we got to try and move to, or we want to move to, because that's going to cause more questions from the C-suite and those that don't understand it, and we need to try and explain it to them. So I think it won't be like an overnight thing, but it's something that we do need to go to over a period of time, just to make sure that education piece is there.
Yeah, it's we're definitely in changing times, I think, from a reporting point of view. And I guess, you know, for anyone watching this who kind of might be starting out or might be looking to refresh or update their reports, I think in terms of trying to kind of plan the perfect report or perfect performance dashboard, I think a really good place to start is just by asking what does the C-suite actually view as marketing success, and going from there. And obviously it's going to be different for different businesses and different markets, but I think there will be some kind of general themes that are correct across the board. So I mean, Sam, I'll start with you on this one. How do you think C-suites view marketing success?
Sometimes it will be purely on revenue, sometimes pipeline, because they then see it's then the sales team. We can deliver the sales team so much pipeline, and then it's them to convert it. But it is generally growth in those areas keeps them happy. And it's then, if you go the next level, it'll be the efficiencies. So what of the sort of cost per conversion or acquisition cost per customer, even like return on investment. Are we wasting much ad spend? Where we're targeting what's working well, what's not working well, where else can we sort of, if we want to suddenly ramp up and drive more revenue and pipeline, where will we do that? What countries is it? Or what campaigns? Can we just suddenly, can we, like the question I always get asked is, oh, this is doing really well. If I just double ad spend, will that mean double pipeline and revenue? And it's things like that that you need to be able to answer. And often it is very much, no, that's not how it works. But it's how would you increase pipeline? What would you need? What things do we need to be focusing, reshifting on? Is it landing page experiments, improving conversion rates? So I think you got to be able to answer that level, but generally it's pipelines going up, revenues going up, it's hitting the targets, they're happy, they don't care as much on hows and whys. You need to know it, because there will be some where it's like, we want to do better, how can we do that? But they don't really care if the cost per click goes up by 12p. That's not something to bother them with.
No, definitely not. And I agree with kind of how you've outlined that, Sam. So I guess it's kind of to kind of summarize it, get the pipeline going, get that volume in there, and then look at how you can make efficiencies, and then perhaps go to kind of scaling the volume of it as well. I think that's probably how most people in the C-suite tend to look at marketing success. Dan, anything to add to that from your side?
I think Sam's covered most of it. I think the only thing there I'd add, and I think every C-suite level person wants this, and it's probably the holy grail, but whether it's actually there or not is a question to be sort of discussed further, is predictability. Can we predictably say that we're going to get X and Y next quarter? So when we're forecasting, we're looking at that, does paid or organic or email or whatever, are they predictably going to drive all of this sort of information? I'm sorry, and these leads, and qualified leads at that. It's all well and good getting all of these leads coming through, but if they're not qualified, that they can go through to a salesperson, and then the salesperson does their job in terms of turning them into customers, then it's not it's worth it. We need to focus on those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other one, which I think you guys kind of touched on, is ROI against specific activity. For something like paid, it's a little bit easier. For something like SEO, it's a bit more of a challenge. But it kind of goes back to Sam's point in terms of the C-suite wants to know, can we deliver volume? Can we then drive those efficiencies? And then more importantly, can we scale it? Can we make this grow? And I think a lot of them can be hesitant to invest more without knowing what that ROI is. And I think it's always been a challenge. I think it's going to continue to be a challenge into next year. And it kind of leads me into my next question, which is around attribution. I think attribution has always been a bit of a challenge, certainly from a reporting point of view. When you consider how the digital marketing landscape is changing with AI and these kind of reporting black spots, I think it's going to become more of a challenge next year as well. Can we, from a reporting point of view, and Dan, I'll come to you with this one, can we simplify attribution for the purpose of reports, or are there too many cons to taking that kind of approach?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really challenging. I think going forward, it's going to continue to challenge. I think the attribution model might need to be changed dependent on what you're trying to do and at what sort of area of the customer journey. Is it, if you're doing content, for example, and you user-led content, is it first click? And that's the thing that you're looking at. Whereas if it's paid, is it last click? Or, I mean, how do we attribute that slightly differently depending on the channel and where you are within that messy funnel? I think we do need to bring in more data sets to be able to help us with this, like the GA4s, the HubSpots, and the like, to bring all of that together. As you said, to get that ROI, we really need to blend this information together. I believe that it's going to be incredibly difficult to simplify it as we go into next year, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. Sam, from your side, can it be simplified? Should it be simplified?
It is difficult. On one of our previous webinars, we discussed that you can't rely on one channel now to get them to click to then convert, and it's not a nice, easy, linear journey. It's messy. There's lots of multiple touch points involved. For me, especially like with Google, I like to use data-driven attribution, which sort of takes into a little bit of like the looks at the whole journey that Google can sort of work out, because there will still be some blind spots there. So it is difficult to try and get exact numbers because there's lots of different paths and touch points involved now. So it is hard to simplify it, but I think it's where, like with Google Ads, the amount of times I'm like, how have we got 5.09 of a conversion? And then you have to explain that you haven't got just a 0.9 of a conversion. It's the data attribution model, which does sort of take into account, and it's looking less at that exact number, but the direction it's going in. So have we seen it go from 5.09 to 8.36 and then to 10.21? And then we're seeing an improvement there. That's where I think we need to be sort of moving towards it, rather than sort of trying to simplify it so much. It's always going to be a challenge, especially as we're getting things like AI coming more involved in how people are researching and searching things. People are less likely to share what they don't want to share their information and data as much. So yeah, it's not something that we can just one size fits all. This is what we're going to be doing, and this is what we're going to have to sort of trust. It's difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I think sadly it's not something that we'll be able to simplify. I think in reality it's going to get more kind of more complex and more difficult to see what is actually driving the conversion. What were the touch points and everything else. In terms of excuse me. In terms of which reporting frameworks work best with people in the C-suite or executives, based on your guys' experience, are there any particular formats, or whether it's a dashboard or a kind of one pager, that you think can have more impact than the other? Dan, I'll come to you first with this one.
I think you need to get straight to the point early with the C-suite. I think you don't need pages and pages. You need a one pager, and the first element of that is straight to the point. How much money did we get? What was the revenue sort of point? And then the next bit is, how did we lead into that? So revenue was X. We drove X MQLs to SQLs. That's the sort of approach, because we're looking there at people that are looking at the end goal. They don't care about the different types of campaigns as much. They just want to know the outcome of those campaigns. So reduce all of the unnecessary metrics, go really clean and say, this is it, this is the key numbers, and then the why as well. I mean, how did this happen, why it happened? But at a high level, you don't need to go into the depth that you would if you're talking to the director of marketing or the CMO and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I think there's there's still a bit of a balancing act to do with trying to be kind of top level and really useful, but trying for it not to be too thin in terms of the report. I mean, I guess it's different for different people, but I'd imagine there are people in the C-suite who kind of want that information as well, who want to see the dashboard. Maybe they've got a particular question on something from the summary and they want to kind of dig deeper. Do you think a kind of an approach like the one you outlined, with the choice to then have that extra information might be useful?
I think there's always going to be that if you're creating a report and you've got multiple pages, then they can always go into that data if they want to. I think the focus should be giving them what they need at that point in time. I think everyone is going to ask questions. Everyone's going to have different views and different information they want to get on a monthly basis, but it's never going to be the same. I guess it's also the output. How do you do that? Is it in a report system such as Agents Analytics? Is it in a spreadsheet, which like to that can be incredibly messy, but we've seen really good spreadsheets that are being used by CMOs and the C-suite that actually gives them all the information and answers those questions if they have it at that point in time. So the mechanism of these reports are also something that should be discussed with the C-suite and your contacts at the agency, at the business, sorry.
Yeah, oh yeah, completely agree. And Sam, from your point of view, from your experience, is there any particular reporting frameworks or formats that you think have a better impact with the C-suite?
I think it's keep it simple, easy to read, bullet points. You don't need to you're not writing a novel, so remove fluffy language as well. It is straight to the point. Like they're very often very busy. They just want to know what's gone on. So Dan's correct. You want to give them that little bit of top line information at the beginning, headline, this is what's happened last month or last quarter, like revenue's gone up by X amount, like cost per conversion's gone down, whatever it may be, that's a snapshot. Then you can go into that little bit more detail underneath, but prioritizing what they're more likely to care about and what's had the biggest impact. Again, don't bother wasting their time if cost per click's gone up by like 12p and click-through rates improved by 0.1%. They don't care about those metrics. It's all about what's going to deliver them the results or what's made that bigger impact. Has it been? They might care about sort of more locational, geographical changes. Have we seen a spike somewhere? Have we suddenly seen like America spike in conversion rate? So is there something going on there that we can build upon? That's what they care about, and they don't want these like you don't want big long sentences with fluffy language, and just keep it short, sweet, simple, easy to read. They can skim through it, got it, I know what's happening, whether it's good, whether it's bad. Don't try and cherry pick like metrics either to sort of hide what may really be happening. They'd much rather know about what's really going on, and then they might be able to help, or they might be able to guide or sort of push certain things forwards to help improve performance. But yeah, I'd sort of focus on what matters.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like the kind of holy grail of reporting formats might be the kind of top level summary, all the key information the C-suite wants, but then giving them the ability to dig deeper, perhaps with a report that went to the kind of marketing team rather than the C-suite, or just give them access to a dashboard where they can kind of go into it in their own time. One thing I really wanted to cover was, I think if you consider all of the change going on at the moment with the introduction of AI, the kind of privacy black spots that we're seeing on with some channels as well, it's almost certainly going to be a changing period for reporting. Most people are going to have to take a step back this year, I think, and kind of rethink how they do their reporting. And with that, I think will come some mistakes. So Dan, I'll start with you on this one. What are the kind of key mistakes that you anticipate marketers making in terms of reporting next year?
I think there's going to be a couple. I think some people won't do exactly what you just said in terms of taking that step back and reevaluating what they should be doing. I think they're just going to plow ahead, sort of bury their head in the sand a little bit, and continue to use marketing language and marketing sort of metrics to then tell the C-suite what's going on. I think they do need to, or we do, or everybody needs to start thinking about the metrics that we're using, the commercial language that we're sort of wanting to use, and making sure that we're doing the right things. Going back to Sam's point just now, removing any fluff, giving them exactly what they want, talking about actually the outputs, not necessarily the inputs to that. But I still think that's not going to happen. I think the other thing that I feel that the mistakes people tend to make is similarly going back to something that Sam just said just now was consistent in sort of the reporting periods, the data sources, the definitions that we're using. Don't change the metrics month in, month out to tell the story that you want to tell. Use the same metrics and the same sort of definition that's going to tell the story through good and bad times across all of the same reporting periods. If you're doing it on month on month, then always use a month. Don't use 30 days one time, 20 like 30 days the next day, but that's just missing out periods of months and days and stuff like that. I think that's really important, but I still believe that that will continue to be made as we go into 2026.
Yeah, I think I put my money on that as well. Sam, I think Dan's covered quite a lot of ground there, but are there any mistakes that you see from your side happening next year?
I think it's not necessarily, obviously Dan's touched on what, like, not changing and things like that, but I think even mistakes that I see now is people not reporting, like, say, year-on-year metrics. There's a lot of seasonality that happens. Like, you've got to sort of try and give a true picture of it. So December's generally always going to be worse than November. So how does it compare to the previous December, as an example? So I think we need to be looking and making sure we're not going to continue making those mistakes as well. So I think, yeah, it's definitely that element, cherry picking the results or having it not looking at the same timeframes, or just trying to skew the story so it makes you look good. That might work for what, a month or two, but they're going to clock on. It's like, hang on a minute, I'm still in pipeline, revenue are down. What's going on here? You've told me everything's great. It's like, oh yeah, if you look at this month, then the clicks are great, but if you look at this bit, no, keep it consistent, be honest, and then look at what you're going to do about it and adding those sort of next steps in to be able to sort of give confidence that we're working on improving the results. And even if results are really good, don't just be like, oh yeah, conversions are up or revenue's up. It's like, why? Still look into that why, because that will help be able to keep improving the performance.
I think ultimately all of the things that we talked about just now, but also throughout the session, is barring AI and the disruption that that's bringing, a lot of it are mistakes or issues that we've seen for quite some time. And I think reporting is one of those that it's almost like the unloved child, if you like. It's sort of that necessity that no one wants to do at the end, because it's, I've got to spend X number of hours to just put this report together and then tell somebody above me that they don't listen, they don't even read it. But then if they're not reading it, why are they not reading it? It's likely because they're not providing them the information, or it doesn't give them what they need. So you need to start to go to them and speak to them and say, look, how can I get you engaged in this? Because an engaged C-suite, C-level will be better for you in the long term, especially with all the disruption that's coming up. If you can sort of educate, inform, and say, these are the reasons why, here's the key metrics, this is what we're doing, and then that sort of ripples down into all of your activity.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, Dan. I mean, we talked earlier about, if you're starting with reporting or starting to look at changing it, asking the question, what do the C-suite want to see? But I think you can take that a step further, like you just said, and actually go and talk to them and ask them what they want to see, rather than trying to anticipate it. And that should help with engagement as well. Just to pick up on a point that Sam made, which I think is really, really important, is not cherry picking data. You see it so often, but I don't think I've ever seen it done successfully. People in the C-suite aren't stupid. They're going to know if you're trying to sort of distract with your attention over here around one little thing that's working, but the core metrics are down. They're going to know what you're up to. You're going to lose credibility. It's going to impact future reports, and it's such a bad idea. But I think it's done so frequently. It's definitely right to kind of point that out. So I completely agree with that one. I think the last point I wanted to end with was just, you know, I think we've covered lots and lots and lots of useful advice, but if you guys had one piece of advice or one recommendation as far as reporting goes, what would it be for 2026? I can't remember who I came to last, so Dan, I'll start with you.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks. Okay, so my recommendation is not necessarily going to be talking about any of the metrics and stuff like that. It's going to be take a step back and take a breather so you can evaluate everything first. Because I think a lot of things we could recommend may go into make this change, and this change, but ultimately you need to take that step back and understand what does the C-suite want, what are they looking for, and then how can you bring that back into your reports, and then that may be different dashboards, it may be different sort of metrics, or it may be integrating other things. Of all that, I'm sure some may have wanted to mention just now, but I just think we just need to take that big step back to evaluate what it is that we want to report on and how we get that across.
Absolutely. Sam, from your side?
Just keep the story simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't fluff it up. Just tell what's happening and what's driving the pipeline and revenue. So it will, like a lot of people will need to relook at their conversion tracking and how it's all linked. But to get the best results, to get the best reports, it's keep the story simple and tied to what's going to interest the C-suite and pipeline revenue it is.
Really good advice. I think that's probably a good place for us to wrap up. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. I hope you found the session useful. We've covered quite a lot, from the pitfalls of overcomplicating reporting to how blended attribution and business-linked KPIs can help marketing teams demonstrate real commercial impact. I think if there's one message to leave with, it's, as Sam almost ended with there, keep it simple. Make it revenue linked or business goal linked. Tell a clear story. I think we've all agreed that the C-suite doesn't need more data. They need confidence that marketing is driving measurable business outcomes. If you'd like to continue the conversation, or if you have any questions we can help with, or explore how we're helping clients rethink their approach to reporting, do feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to help, always happy to chat. And don't forget, this is just one part of a wider 2026 digital strategy series, so make sure to check out the other sessions, which will help with your planning for the year ahead. Thanks very much, and see you in the next one.